What's your business? Don't think when I'm riding by. Ain't no drizzle, be the truth off the east side. I know we ain't got my money because they ducking high. I grind for me and mine. I got the green line. I got to get it how I live it.
Well, hello, my children. Welcome to the stream. This is, of course, your host, Jim. Please remember to like and comment, share, and check out any other content that I've done on this channel if you're new. I'm going to get a share screen going. I'm going to read some of the suspicious comments. And then we're going to get going into the topic du jour, my friends, which is the power and the might of Orthodoxy in the United States. Ooh, split states. I know we could do that. I'm goofing on show territories. Cool. All right, guys, give me 1 second. I'm setting this up, and then we're gonna get going. So y'all had best, and I demand best. Respect the process. All right, let's read some of the comments before we get into what we need to get into today. We have Iyuki saying, goat in a building. Freakiness is a part of life. That's the theme song of the show, which still nobody's been able to figure out where that song's from. I didn't write it. It's not my song. But it is the theme of the show. A damn K says, good morning to some, good evening to others, and good afternoon to the rest. I like that. It's like a sorcerer's introduction. Justin C says, a live dream stream is something to dream about. Well, my child, welcome to the dream. Theological Bigfoot. New Year Day 2. Yeah, we're all 2 days old now. And I know that there's a couple more comments that I missed that did not appear for some reason on the chat. Erman said, have some compassion on us Europeans, bro. It's the middle of the night. To which I responded, Erman, the stream is for American Orthodox. We don't acquiesce to your Ursula-approved time zone. Yeah. Angel Martinez says, Jim is such a gem. Thank you. Theodore says, do not forget the Carpatho-Russians. I don't know too much about the jurisdiction, but I do know where they're situated in the U.S., so we'll cover that. That was by Theodore Perkovsky. He also says, we also have churches that are directly under Moscow, OCA, Ukrainian, etc. OCA, Ukrainian, and Carpatho, based in Jonestown, Pennsylvania, are descendants of the immigrants from the former Austro-Hungarian Empire who returned to Orthodoxy in the U.S. Cool. Somber _ Whimsy says, why does Jim look so unnecessarily handsome in the thumbnail? He usually looked like a Ninja Turtle. Well, I've been look maxing lately. And also, I mean, that's just, if you appear to me, and if I appeared to you in front of the street, that's what I would look like, no joke. So, the Ninja Turtle time is done. I've had myself a bit of a glow up. But you're not going to see me because, quite honestly, I'm just kind of a little too sad to be on the camera still. All right, let's just check out. I think that's all we need for comments. Okay, John Anon says, looking forward to the stream. Hope you're doing well. I'm going to close out the actual thing. Please like the comments and share, and then we're going to get right into today's topic. So, as usual, the first 10 minutes of this stream, if you're new, not a lot happens. I'm just kind of getting stuff going. So, go get a snack. Perhaps a treat. And then in a minute and a half, the main meat will begin. Christian Arbiter says hello. John Anon, already read yours out, but thank you. It wouldn't be a Gene stream without a map. That's true. Trad, Biz, Larper, Groiper, Empire, when, says Zeke. To which Imperator of Warhammer of Ford says Skittle Larper. Conan says, glad to be here. Should be a yellow thumbs up. Thank you. Eric Vigilant says, your opinion on converts being received via chrismation instead of baptism. No comment on that topic. I have not read into it. And you guys know on my channel that I very openly declare when I don't know something, I'm not going to take a position. I do not know the controversy. Well, I went to an English school, so the controversy of that topic. And so I will elect not to give you an answer. Sorry. I do know that at my local church, they do chrismation. So, based on who has authority over myself, I would be inclined to say chrismation is not a problem, but I haven't looked into it, so you're going to have to be patient. Rebel Umbreon says, ready for another team jam. Carpatho-Russians, the Ruthenians say hello. Okay. Zeke, put a Q at the end, then we can do the Arabic Zeke. Anyway, biggest problem in my view remains jurisdictional conflict and general liberalism. Well, I'm about to rip open a pack of peanuts and show you that that actually is not a huge issue. Did I miss anything on the last live? No, I didn't keep that one up. It didn't get a lot of traction. So that stream was basically just me ranting about how I don't like Pelagians, but I also don't like Latinizers. I mean, I don't. If you've seen my previous stuff, I don't think that's a shock. Sorry, Zeke, you still didn't spell it right. We're not going to wait for you. So we're going to look at some of the states here. Let me get my map up. Get my custom map, I mean. I didn't make the green map that you can see right there. Okay. So we're going to take a look here. This is my map. As you can see, we included territories, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, etc. They're probably not going to be relevant here. We're just going to go over that really quick, and then we're going to go over maybe some interesting cultural milieu within that. Then I want to discuss the jurisdiction issue. I want to discuss the whole theology. Is everybody who's Orthodox in America an Origenistic, liberal, Arian, Pelagian? Or is that wrong? We're going to check that out. Orthodox Adamite, with a very interesting thumbnail, I should say. I'm sure you know where that's from. All right, let's get into it. We're going to start with California. California. So this is California. I always thought California should be yellow, so it's going to be yellow. Just reminds me of California Pizza Kitchen. Any of you guys eat there? That is a room-approved restaurant. All right, so California, per my research, and if any of you Californians here disagree, tough nuts, because I did some statistical analysis of this, although it is updated essentially to 2020. So this may be a few years behind the times. But by 2020, we've already had the big internet boom of Orthodoxy. So I know it seems like this is all very recent, but that was 5 years ago. Per my source, California has probably the highest actual number of Orthodox Christians in the United States. I bet you guys didn't know that. In terms of just the raw number itself. Well, stop. Okay. In terms of the raw number, California has the highest. So the state of California has approximately 75,000 Orthodox Christians, give or take a couple hundred people per 2020. That could have increased. Now, my studies have mainly been on Eastern Orthodoxy. So this is not going to be including the Copts. What are you guys calling me? Aphysite, Monophysite, doesn't matter. They're not part of this. We're just looking at EO right now. We'll cover OO another time. So this is Eastern Orthodoxy. So if you are Egyptian, it's over. All right? But you should still watch the stream. So as a percent of the population of California, it doesn't even crack 1%. It's about a fifth of 1%. 0.2% of Californians are Orthodox. But California is a massive state, and 75,000 people, yeah, that's pretty small. But if you condense that to a township, it would be 2 townships. So like we have townships here and villages here in the greater Chicagoland area. Niles is where my dad lives. That's a township of 30,000. So about 2.5 Niles, that and 2.5 of those entire townships would be the Orthodox of California. So it's not a great number. Like, let's be honest, that's pretty small. However, it's not absolutely nothing. And remember that these are mainly immigrants, and so we're not including people who converted online and they may not declare it in the census. So the highest in terms of jurisdiction in California is GoArch. So that's the largest in the LA area. There's also OCA and ROCOR that are quite prominent in San Francisco. Serbian Orthodox Church was founded in 1894 there. And so we basically have Greek, ROCOR, Serbia, and the OCA. Now you guys may be wondering, on earth is the OCA? Right? What is it? So the Orthodox Church of America is basically this attempt to create a single jurisdiction for the United States. So it's a combination of all ethnic groups. It is not Greek-led. It is not Russian-led. It takes from all of them. I will say, having gone to a handful of OCA parishes, I think it leans Russian in terms of its aesthetics. So even though like people who are Rokor or Moscow might say, "Oh, OCA is all liberal, it's disgusting, it's rat shit," uh, be that as it may, in your opinion, the aesthetics at least seem to me to be quite Russian. So I've gone to Orthodox churches. I've gone to, I mean, obviously, but I mean, I've gone to different jurisdictions. I've gone to Greek, I've gone to Antioch, and I've gone to, and there's a difference. We'll get to Antioch too, because there's a difference in America between convert heavy Antiochian and hardcore cradle Antiochian. For the Greeks, it's kind of, there really aren't any Greek churches which are like 90% convert, but there are some that have more. Anyway, when you go to a Greek Orthodox church, you can definitely tell. Like, you know, you're not in a Slavic church. You know, this is not Russia. You know, this is not Serbia. Even though there are cultural similarities in the Balkans, this is definitely a Greek Orthodox church. That much I will definitely say. So OCA leans toward the Slavic style, the Eastern Slavic style. So Russia, I would say. I've been to Russian churches. I find that the OCA that I've been to follow the kind of tone that you hear very commonly in a Russian church. I see that a lot of the women veil, and that may be a convert thing. So maybe that's not entirely correct. Maybe that's because a lot of the people who go to OCA, a lot of the women are converts from the internet, and so they're going to be a little more conservative than your average, I don't know, 45-year-old woman who's going to the Greek church. Greeks tend not to veil, and they're not terminally online. And remember, terminally online can be both good and bad. So I'm not just insulting it. There are people who converted from the online. Let's take a look at some comments and we'll get back into the map. Eric says, also, I read about a mass conversion of Roman Catholic indigenous people in Guatemala. Yeah, they were Mayan. Well, they identify as Mayan. Allegedly, 500,000 upwards to 1 million converted to Eastern Orthodoxy. Yeah, let's clarify that. I believe it was 450 to 550,000 Eastern Orthodox, and then a further 700,000 joined the Oriental Orthodox Syriac Church there. So Guatemala has seen this like massive conversion away from Catholicism. But hey, we're doing USA today. We will cover Latin America a different time. We're going to do Central America and South America. Then we're going to do Sub-Saharan Africa. And then we're going to do the rest of Asia. So save that for then, but thank you, Eric. Zeke says, a subject to talk on as well, which, emphasis on which, I'm unsure about, is the general pro-Confederate faction in the South. What does this have to do with Orthodox Christianity? Stonewall Jackson liturgy? What are you talking about? Adam says, which is funny since California in the North was rediscovered by the Russians. Yeah, that's true. So basically every Greek in California. Are these practicing Orthodox? It just says people who identify as Orthodox. Now, my research has led me to believe these are mostly practicing, even if they don't go to church every week. And remember, listen to what the fathers say. Listen to what the elders say in Orthodoxy. Yes, people should go to church every week, but you can't judge someone who doesn't. They may be fighting a spiritual battle that you are not. And I know many people who go only once a month maybe, but they have an intense piety, an intense zeal for Orthodoxy. So you don't know everybody's situation. But these are people who identify. So they're not just like some atheist Greek in college who just on a birth certificate says, you know, Rum, Helen, Orthodox, whatever, Go Arch. These are people who identify. So 75,000. Well, naturally, because of St. John Maximovich of San Francisco. Yeah, that's what I thought. Exactly. All right, let's go back. I've heard it's a bit progressive. Okay, we're gonna go into that after. Yes, Imperator, I know Stonewall Jackson was not Orthodox Christian. I just thought it was funny. So California, about 75,000. Let's move on. We're gonna go to the Empire State. I don't know if you can even call it that anymore. Zoran Mamdani. Wonder what that guy is he gonna win. So this is the Empire State. New yuck. All right. As a Chicagoan, I gotta say yuck. New yuck. That ain't New York. I'm busting. I don't mind New York. There's about, again, like California, roughly 75,000 Orthodox Christians in the state of New York. So that does not just mean NYC. So there's no, Greek borough inside of New York City. Like, I'm not in Brooklyn. I'm in Rome. I'm in the Rome Millet of New York City. We don't believe in that. Anyway, so Yeah. For the state of New York, Orthodox Christianity is almost half of 1%, 0.4% roughly. The highest or most prominent churches there, again, Go Arch, so Greek Orthodox in New York City particularly, ROCOR in NYC and in upstate, Serbian in the NYC metro. So if you guys aren't from a big city, metro just means the areas around the city where a lot of people live. So not everybody lives in the city. You got the downtown, you got the inner city, the outer city, then the metro, meaning the suburbs and boroughs that are around it. Not the boroughs, but the suburbs, villages, townships, etc., that are around a big city. So Go Arch in the city, ROCOR in the city and in upstate, Serbian in the NYC metro. Obviously, there are a lot of Balkan and Eastern European migrants there, so that is obviously no shock. You have a lot of Ellis Islanders coming into New York. We also have a high population of Russians in the upstate area. So if you go to upstate New York and you're here or here or here, you have a high probability of running into a ROCOR church. If you go to the city itself and you're looking for an Orthodox church, you'll probably find Serbian or Greek, but you will also be able to find ROCOR. So like I said, it's about 75,000 people. We go to Illinois, the gold standard. I'm just kidding. It's not run that well. Ugh. So I've always thought Illinois was good with the blue color. And not just because it habitually votes Democrat. So this is Illinois. There's about 52,000 Orthodox Christians here. Again, about half of 1% of the entire population of the state. The most prominent would be Go Arch, the largest community of Greek Orthodox Christians and just ethnic Greeks in general outside of Greece lives in Chicago, Illinois. So keep that in mind. If you go anywhere outside of the country of Greece, the highest Greek community in terms of number in the entire world is in Chicago, Illinois. We have a Greek town here, actually. OCA, and yeah, I was correct. The OCA, particularly in Chicago, has a kind of Ukrainian-Russian roots. Many of them had been Russian or Ukrainian churches, joined into the graft of OCA, or were flat out just Ukrainians or Russians who said, we don't want to stay in our patriarchates, we want to build the OCA up, and that's what they did. Serbian as well, pretty huge in Chicago. So in Chicago Metro, we have Serbs, we have Greeks, we have OCA, which come from a Russo-Ukrainian background. So yeah, definitely. There's a monastery actually near Chicago that you can visit, which is part of the Serbian jurisdiction. So I'll show you guys Greektown real quick. Let's see. It's kind of going downhill. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's not that great. But it was pretty cool. Like, it's still decent. Like, you can get a good hero there. Like, you can get a good stuff. Ignore the parades. Like, it doesn't look like that most of the time. So there. Usually they don't have this blue stuff. But they have right here the traditional Hellenic columns and stuff. There's a Walgreens, which I don't know if you can tell, but there actually is Greek writing there. It's like the token Greek writing. They have planterns and stuff that are like pro-Greek. There's Greek islands, which I'm not going to comment on that. They sometimes have good food. That's all I'll say. I don't know if Santorini's even around anymore. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. The one that I prefer is Athena. So here, and that's another thing I want to talk. Oh, that's Pegasus. It used to be called Pegasus. I'm going nuts. Hang on a second. This is not true. I was just there. Yeah, I think it's the same place. So if we look at Athena here, this is the interior. You obviously see this Greek god motif. And I know people are going to freak out and go, oh, see, the Greeks are pagans. They're LARPers. They don't believe in the Orthodox faith. They are kafir. If you're not Hanafi, you are a kafir. Join ROCOR, you're a kafir. But if you actually take a look here, Greeks don't actually believe in this. First of all, I don't even know what this is. I may be totally incorrect. This might not actually have to do with paganism, but I'm assuming it does. Let's assume it does. Normal Greek people, such as this gentleman here, if he's Greek, do not actually believe that Athena will intercede for their prayer and deliver them to the last day. Okay? It's not a hadith where Athena comes down on the last day to break the church and slaughter the swine and establish the Sharia law of Mount Olympus in Damascus. No Greek believes that. It's just a fun thing, and I know you guys are going to freak. Oh, it's paganism. And it is paganism. You are correct. I'm not like making an apologia for it. But I'm just explaining, if you don't know a lot of Greeks, they don't actually believe in this. This is a way to hook in tourists. Oh, look, we're the ancient Greek people. If you go to an Egyptian restaurant, whether it's run by the Muslimin or by the Copts, they're gonna have pyramid pharaoh stuff there. It doesn't mean they bow to Bastet every evening, like 5 times a day, just bow to Ra, the sun god. They don't do that, and Greeks don't do that. It's just a way to hook in tourists and just kind of be, hey, I'm proud to be Hellenic, I'm proud to be Greek. We're Orthodox, but here, have a Zeus hero. Have a Zeus hero, a hero made by Zeus. So I'm just letting you guys know. Rogue Renaissance gives a $4.99 super chat. That's correct. Guys, if you can super chat, that would be super helpful. Rogue Renaissance, thank you. Adam K says it did not help the Catholic Bishop of Chicago. Ireland was pushing Eastern Catholics to become Latinized, hence the OCA formation there. I'm going to let you guys come in and talk about that. Gaddy says, sorry for interrupting, but I just interacted with a prot who said Jesus was actually capable of being tempted by the devil to fall into the tricks of Satan during the fasting of the 40 days. Yeah, that's saying that Jesus is not immutable. So that means he's subject to change, which means he's not actually the Son of God, which means he's an Arian. Like your friend is an Arian. All right, we're done with Athena. You guys don't get to eat with me anymore. It's over. Sorry, but it's over. What did I want to look at now? Oh, and then also in Chicago, we have some Antiochians. And maybe if you guys have been following me, you go, oh, Jim lives in Chicago. His family's Lebanese. There must be a lot of Lebanese in Chicago. I'm going to be honest with you. There's really not. There's not that many Levantines in Chicago. They've grown in recent years. There's been some Palestinians who've moved here, but they mainly live in like the southern cities, like not even Chicago. You live in Joliet, you're not Chicagoan. I'm sorry. It's like if you're not actually from Long Island, you're not an Islander. So if you're not from the city metro, and that includes the suburbs that are right next to Evanston, I'll consider that the Chicago land. You're from Joliet, you can get out of here. You're not from Chicago. Anyway, a lot of Palestinians came up from there, but there's not a ton of Arabs in Chicago. Like there's a few communities. I've found some. There's a Middle East bakery on Foster Avenue that I go to all the time. Get my stuff there. Don't follow me there, guys. It's weird. But now you know where I go. But it's just few and far between. There's not that many Lebanese. There's a lot of Assyrians, but they're not Eastern Orthodox. All right, and there's a very famous miraculous icon, by the way, at here, St. George Antiochian Orthodox Church. So this is a beautiful church, and they have a miraculous icon there. And then, not that it's all of you guys' business, but this is actually the church where we held my mom's funeral about a month ago. So yeah, this is part of the Greek metro. My mom had always gone to the Greek churches. As you can see, nobody beheaded us for not being Greek and going there sometimes. So that is what it is. Yeah, let's move on from that. Let's go back to the map. So there you had Illinois. I'm not going to do every state, don't worry. Florida is up next. So Florida, I think, would be appropriate for the pink. It's kind of like I always associate Florida with like Miami Vice, Jay Dyer aesthetics. So if we look at Florida here, and yes, I will read your comments soon, with about 50,000. So to recap, California and New York, 75,000 each. Illinois, 52,000. Florida, 50,000, which is about 1/5 of 1% of the state of Florida. The most common Orthodox in Florida are, again, Goarj, so Greek. Apparently, they have a big community in Tar Pond Springs. I don't know where that is. Serbian, there's a lot of parishes in the Miami metro area. Antiochian are also in Miami and in the areas around that, but it just, I couldn't get that much data on the Antiochians in Florida, but I just know that they're there. So mainly Greek, Serbian, and some Levantine Arabs. I'm not going to dwell on that because I don't know that much about Florida. My mom wanted to move there, and she'd set up her business there, some of her business there, but that's neither here nor there right now. But yeah, I have been to Florida. Nice place. We only have a couple more left. Let's go to New Jersey. And I find that one to be interesting because New Jersey is almost always associated with... that brown and red is suddenly not looking good. Okay. New Jersey is always associated with Catholicism because of Italians, right? Although if you called them Italians in Italy, they would freak out. So they're mainly Sicilians and Calabrians. So Sicilians don't consider themselves, like they'll say they're part of Italy, but like they'll say they're also different. They say we don't speak no Italian, we speak Siciliano. Anyway, New Jersey's actually 0.5% Orthodox. There's 42,000 Orthodox Christians in New Jersey. Again, Go Arch is the most popular one in Newark for sure. Then you have Romanian and Serbian Orthodox also in that area. Proximity to New York City, there's quite a few Greeks. So basically, we have Serbian, Romanian, Greek Orthodox are the primary ones in New Jersey. We have Pennsylvania now. This is where the Carpatho. Where are we? All right. This is where the Carpatho Russian Church is going to come in a little more. So let's get that. All right. Whoa. My bad. All right. If we go to Pennsylvania, we got about 42,000. So we're getting a little lower now, but still not a totally insignificant number of people. They're about 1/3 of 1%. The highest one actually in Pennsylvania is the OCA, but the people there have the Carpatho Russian roots. So Johnstown Diocese. There's also the Serbian jurisdiction, popular in Pittsburgh, and Go Arch as well. So you're going to find that Go Arch, aka the Greeks, are popular in pretty much every state. The Greeks by themselves are probably 40% of the Orthodox population in the United States, maybe 35%. So that's very significant because, we're not even including all the other ones yet. But yeah, OCA, it goes, I think, Greek, then OCA, then ROCOR in terms of the United States of America. But anyway, the OCA, depending on the area, may have different roots. So an OCA here in Chicago has a Ukrainian ROCOR root, and the OCA in Pennsylvania has a Carpatho-Russian root. All right. Then we have Massachusetts. Let's just do that. Right, Massachusetts. I'm going to get through this kind of quickly. Got about 40,000 people, more than half of 1%, so about 0.6, 0.7%. Again, Go Arch, the highest one. Especially you have Greeks in the Boston area, as well as Syrian and Lebanese Antiochians. That I didn't know about. So apparently we've got some Paisans up in Massachusetts. So basically Boston has a lot of Greco-Middle Easterners. I didn't find much information on the Slavic churches there. I do know that once we go over to Ohio, the land that time forgot, we get into about 30,000. And OCA and Go Arch are about tied in Cleveland. Then following, we have the Serbian jurisdiction. So yeah, I don't know too much more about that. And then I just want to close out on Alaska and Michigan. So let's take a look at both of those real quick. So we will do Michigan as dark blue. Michigan, obviously in Detroit and in Dearborn, you have massive amount of Orthodox Christians, at least per what you would expect. The Greeks being in Detroit and the Antiochians being in Dearborn. Also want to stress that a lot of the Arabs that live in Dearborn are Chaldeans from Iraq, and then you have a lot of Muslims, so they're not all Orthodox. And finally, Alaska may surprise you. They actually have the lowest of the group that we've talked about so far. They only have about 14 to 15,000 Orthodox Christians compared to everything else we've looked at. But you guys have to remember, Alaska, being much larger than Texas, I don't know why it's put here like that, is a sparsely populated place. So even though it has the lowest amount of all the states I've put so far, and I haven't done every state and I'm not going to, with only about 15,000, that by itself is about 2% of the entire population of Alaska. So obviously the highest ones there are going to be ROCOR and OCA. So you're not going to find a lot of Greek and Antiochian churches up in Alaska, probably zero. So the OCA has both Russian and native Alaskan heritage, particularly Kodiak and I think Aleut. So those are the highest ones in Alaska. Alaska has a very interesting flavor profile because it's not from a bunch of Ellis Island immigrants. It's not just a bunch of Greeks and Eastern Europeans who showed up. We're talking about natives of the area who met the Russians. The Russians stayed. Some of them stayed over, planted some churches, blended into the people. And then another thing about Alaska that's interesting and kind of tragic is that when you look at it, hang on a second. Yeah. The interesting thing about Alaska, which is also a little bit tragic, is that you have this phenomenon where a lot of the ethnic Russians who came over ended up converting to like Methodism. So the Methodist Church, Episcopalian, other kind of high church Protestants. So that's kind of one of the tragic things where if they had stayed Orthodox, the population of the Orthodox would be a lot higher in Alaska. So there are a lot of ethnic Russians in Alaska, but maybe they've been deracinated. They don't really know their background that well, and they've just become Episcopalians and Methodists. That's kind of it. They don't really know what else is that. They're not very aware of their Orthodox heritage. You have the Aleut, Native Alaskan, Kodiak peoples who became Orthodox as well. So it's a very interesting experience in Alaska. It's probably the only place in America we can say Native Americans are some of the archons of that church, and then the people who showed up just literally migrated there upon discovering it. Whereas we have all these later immigrant communities like the Greeks, Antiochians, Serbs, etc., in the rest of America. So that's kind of a really quick explanation of what we have there. I do want to get into a few things. Number one, Mr. Wojak, is it over? Is it time to doom? Or is it time to be excited? I would say it's an interesting time to look at Orthodoxy in the United States. So I would say for those who are kind of out there and say, yeah, we're going to convert 10 million people, I don't think that's the case. I think if you put all the Orthodox Christians together, it's probably like 1.3 million, maybe. I only did like 8 states, but I really don't think we're near 5 million. I think it's ridiculous. Maybe 1.4 million or so. There may be more, and that's just people who are counted. Maybe a lot more people who are not counted, who just converted online. So Orthodoxy's become a viable option. I don't think, contrary to Catholic and Protestant propaganda on the internet, that Orthodoxy is just this insular ethnic thing and, white Americans aren't going to go for it and black Americans aren't going to go for it. I don't think that's true at all. There are some ethnic enclave churches. That much is true. But to say that, it's over and there's no churches where you can find any kind of, I guess, local American culture that has nothing to do with LARPing as a Russian or a Greek, that's not true. You can find a lot of those churches. The Antiochian churches, by the way, they have a massive convert rate. I think obviously OCA, but also Antioch and then Greek have the highest amount of converts. So people complaining that the Greeks aren't letting people into Orthodoxy, that's not true. The Greeks have the third highest, welcoming of converts into the Orthodox faith. Secondly, the online factor is huge. We now see that Orthodox are able to have some kind of a presence to explain things in an Orthodox way. Yeah, for the most part, when atheists are trashing Christianity, in their head, they're just thinking of low church Protestant evangelicalism and maybe Catholicism, and maybe the Orthodox are not on their radar. But it's also not the 1970s anymore, and so people are a lot more aware than they used to be, even if not everybody knows what's going on. Death of Compromise, True Orthodox Channel, says, rest in peace, St. Alexis Cathedral in Wilkes-Barre. I don't know the story with that, but I know that it's being torn down or something. Orthodox Adamite says, doom and gloom. Okay. Let me read some more of the comments. Apologies for any noise. Kind of annoying. Let's see. I'm late on a couple comments. Nemo. Wow, we found you. Says, I am at Go Arch in South Florida. Cool. Mikhail says, Pennsylvania has the OCA monastery. St. Tikhon's established by St. Tikhon of Moscow in the 1910s. A must visit. Cool. There's also some kind of miraculous icon of Archangel Michael in Tarpon Springs. I love to see Michigan rankings in Ohio. Well, I did Ohio. I said they had about 30,000. And Michigan is a little lower than Ohio, probably like 27,000. Yeah. All right. Imperator says, I'd be personally irritated doing this stream being Orthodox and having LARPers in chat. Well, Warhammer, a lot of the people in chat are not LARPers. They just sound like it because a lot of people are chronically online. No offense to some of you, but some of you are chronically online. Let's all be honest with that. Let's go back to this profile for a second. We'll get rid of the Doomer guy. Cincinnati has got a lot of Orthodox and a growing population from Moldova and Ukraine. Rice says, Alaska isn't as Orthodox as some people like to think. The community is older. It's more rooted in Alaska, but Alaska is not Orthodox clay. I mean, if you're using that in a historical way, I suppose you could. It did belong to Russia at some point. But to say, you're going to go up to Alaska and start talking about the noose and stuff, and if people have phronema, whatever, they're not going to know what you're talking about. Like I said, a lot of people who have uh, partial Russian ancestry, ethnic origins, might not be Orthodox at all. That might be a forgotten part of their heritage. So, yeah, I would still say that Alaska's primarily high church Protestant, followed by low church followed by Orthodox. Sebek says, I'm from Alaska. I go to Antiochian, but most are Rokor. Oh, yeah, you proved me wrong. Rachel Wilson says, did he already do Texas? I did not, Rachel, because I actually don't know. In my research, I only did like the top 9 or so states just by pure numbers. So if you have any enlightening information on Texas, let us know. I have heard good word about Texas and about Arizona. I know of the monastery in Arizona. So no, guys, I have not forgotten that. I just wanted to introduce kind of the big ones first. So Death to Compromise Donut says the OCA venerates papists and Anglicans. Maybe explain why, what that is, who's doing it, and why. Because I know that the head of the OCA had made some bishop had made some bizarre comments about Origin, which Jay Dyer put on his channel a while ago. So yeah, that's pretty bizarre. I know that the head of Go Arch has done bizarre stuff. I'm just reporting what I see from the ground. That most people don't seem to be, as I said, bizarre. They don't seem to be whack job liberals. One thing about the Orthodox is that they seem to take religion as something to conserve, not kind of activism. And I know people complain like, oh, see, the Orthodox don't evangelize. But one thing that's kind of a good fruit from that is that it's the social justice movement amongst many youths in America is really an extension of like hyper liberal Protestant Christianity. And to a lesser extent, you could justify using Catholicism as well. But it's mainly a low church Protestant thing. It's taking the kind of like very generic message of do-goodery from Christianity and making it your cosmic destiny to correct all the wrongs in the world. So liberals are doing inverted evangelism in America. And so one good thing about the Orthodox not being super, running around commanding people to listen to them all the time is that they treat religion as something to keep as like a flame of tradition to keep lit, rather than this like, we're going to demand everybody does what we want. John Anon says newly canonized Saint Olga of Alaska is the first Native American saint who was born in the USA. Finally, these people are gone. Orthodox Adamite says, what Methodist, how do they manage to think that was a good idea? Rachel Wilson says, I will rewind later. Doom and gloom. Okay. Rachel Wilson says that she and Andrew are relocating to Texas next month. Where are you going in Texas, I may ask? And then let me open up the chat. Because quite frankly, that's kind of all I want to talk about. I mean, like there's more to talk about, but it would be fine to do that with you guys here. So just hang on. Okay, the message is pinned. Feel free to call in. Keep it pertinent. Give us your experience of Orthodoxy in America. I'm going to go back to OCA. So yeah, there's been this concern that the OCA is extremely liberal. We had the thing I just mentioned, I think Bishop Irenae talking about Origin. Is Originism this massive problem amongst the Orthodox in the United States? I don't think so. Like, I don't think the average Orthodox really gives a rat's feek about Origin. Like, let's be honest. But is it a problem among some intellectuals, quote unquote? Perhaps. Perhaps because they're free from the constraints of these conservative Balkan, Eastern European countries. By conservative, I just mean not liberal. It doesn't necessarily mean they're very traditional either. So they're able to just kind of like make Orthodoxy as anti-Catholic and Protestant as possible. It's like if Protestants and Catholics are Augustinian, we can be the polar opposite, which is to be Origin. So my position is don't do stuff just to be the polar opposite of Protestants and Catholics. There are some really major civilizational and philosophical issues between Catholicism or between the Western denominations, West meaning post-schism, and what we have in Orthodoxy today. Those are quite huge. Like, let's not pretend that's fake. It's not fake. But don't just do the exact opposite. All right, we have quite a few people here. Two Crooks, I'll allow you in a moment. I'm going to let this guy on here first. Hello.
Yo, am I on?
Oh, you're on. What's
Oh,
up?
I didn't expect to be first. I've been on here a couple of times. I'm on a different account, so these things are kind of backwards now. I said a lot earlier, so I don't know if you've been reading, but you read a few of the things that I mentioned. But I wanted to mention there's something else that when people talk about the history of Orthodoxy in America, people will bring up the figures in Alaska like Saint Herman and Saint Innocent, who are very important. And as the historical influence of Orthodoxy in America from the 18th century. But there's also some really old influence in Florida because some English guy basically took a bunch of Italians and Greeks in like the 1720s or to 80s, like in the 18th century, and he brought them to Florida. I think
Okay.
it's St. Augustine, and so there's a historical community over there that's been there for like 300 years. And there's a shrine over there, a St. Fotios shrine commemorating the historical presence within Florida. So there's a like some kind of town. I think it's St. Augustine.
Yeah, I think you would be correct there. Um, I've not been there, but that's pretty interesting. And I know that Orthodoxy has a history that's beyond just like Ellis Island immigrants. What's your personal perspective like on the street, in church? What do you encounter in your own life? Maybe you can enlighten us on that.
Well, I live in Massachusetts. You brought up you didn't know the state of Slavic churches in Massachusetts, and I've recently gone on a mission to visit every single Orthodox church in Massachusetts. And from my
Wow.
experience, Slavic churches are very few. Greek churches are everywhere because the Greek population is so huge. Me being Greek, and I can attest to that. I've
Yeah.
been to maybe two Rokor churches out of like the 30, 40 churches I've been to, and like one Ukrainian church, one Serbian, and like two Bulgarian, and quite a few Albanian. Like I'd say about four Albanian churches, which outnumber the other ones for some reason.
Yeah, it's
So
very interesting. Yeah, so you're saying that the Slavic churches are not there's not a ton of them in Massachusetts, but there's a lot of the Greek churches, obviously.
that's been my experience. There are a few Antiochian ones. Most of them are English liturgy. I've been to one in Roslindale where the liturgy is completely in Arabic.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, Roslindale alone is a for some reason some kind of Orthodox center. That small town, has like four Orthodox churches: one Greek,
Wow.
one Rokor, one the Antiochian, and there's an old Calendarist church over there, a genuine Orthodox, one of the few that's in Massachusetts from what I've seen.
Oh
St.
yeah,
Mark.
that's a whole other topic, but that is very interesting. Yeah, I wanted to mention one thing, guys. So with the Antiochians, I don't know if I brought it up earlier, but the Antiochian church in America specifically has a really high rate of accepting converts. Like, not like any of the churches won't accept, but they're just very welcoming, to the extent that some of them are very, very convert heavy, and they've just kind of like made their own unique character. And then some of them are more cradle heavy, where it's just kind of Levantine people. I know that the St. George one that I mentioned with the miraculous icon is primarily people of Lebanese and Palestinian Christian origin. Um, I know the priest from there, but yeah, that's pretty interesting. As for me in Chicago, I would say we have a mix. We have OCA, which came from mainly Ukrainian background. We have a whole village in Chicago, the Ukrainian village, and we have Greek town. So a lot of Greek, a lot of Ukrainian, and then some Serb as well here in Chicago.
Yeah, I can also speak about upstate New York because I go to
Okay.
school in upstate New York, and there are much fewer Orthodox churches in terms of quantity. Because you mentioned there's like a significant, I think, Russian presence, if I recall correctly, and in the area that I'm in, there's only one Rokor church, and about three Greek churches. So they still outnumber them, but not by the same ratio as in Massachusetts, which is my experience. So.
Yeah, not the same as in Massachusetts, nor as in NYC proper, but yeah. And then there's also, St. Vladimir's Seminary. I forgot to mention that. That's a pretty big one. A lot of if you buy Orthodox books in America, there's a good chance it's going to come from their press. I don't know if you have any books from them, but I do. So, and I know that the people who compiled the Orthodox Study Bible, in English at least, many of them came from St. Vladimir's Orthodox Seminary.
Yeah, there's also an Athonite monastery in New York, St. Nectarios, which is in Roscoe, New York, and they also publish things. I have their, I think it's The Art of Salvation by Elder Ephraim. I have that.
Wow, yeah, I have heard of that. I've never been. Yeah, that's really interesting. So as you can see, guys, it's not doomer time, but it's also not be naive time. Now, I would say that Orthodoxy is steadily maturing in America. It's not like stagnating, but it's reaching a point where we have floods of converts, but then there's also cradle churches. I did want to bring something up. There was a Pew Research thing a while ago saying that, and I will let the other people on as well, and the Jordanville as well. I forgot about that. Thank you, Prodigal Chungus. But if we look at Pew Research, they said that the Eastern Orthodox went down a lot, and that was just because, well, first of all, they got replaced by converts. So instead of growing a lot, it just kind of evened out. But I don't think that's a net negative because sooner or later that slump was going to hit us where older generation dies out and maybe they didn't pass it on to boomers or the people younger than the boomers. So that was going to happen. But if you have a convert tide to kind of even that out, then you're doing decently. And I don't think it's much to be alarmed about. The same thing at incredibly worse proportions is happening to Catholicism and Protestantism in America. So really not that unexpected.
Am I gonna like stay here while other people come on?
Yeah, you can. I'm going to let the next guy on. I'll like Two Crooks on because he's longtime friend, and we'll see what he has to say. And he'll also stay while other people come on. So, Chup, I will be letting you on in 2 minutes. Hey, Crook, what's up?
Doing good. So you discussed Eastern Orthodoxy in America. For
Yeah.
some Oriental Orthodoxy, a lot of the Armenian population is concentrated in California. So, as a consequence, a lot of Oriental Orthodox presence would be there. Though, given California's size and diversity, it's technically a drop in the bucket. It has unfortunately led to a bit of a stereotype that the most rabid Armenian nationalists you see on the internet is from Glendale, California, the same way how people joke the most rabid Muslim you see is actually from London, England, or the most rabid Turkish nationalist is from Berlin. But
Yeah.
as per the map, you can see definitely an Armenian concentration in the coastal areas, so southwest, northeast, though I think that's just a generic application for many immigrant groups, not anything particular to Armenians. As for Copts and Assyrians, I can't quite attest to that, but I do know where there is an Egyptian diaspora, you are more likely to run into Copts than, say, an Egyptian diaspora group in the Gulf countries, because I believe it's mostly Muslim Egyptians that work there, whereas Copts tend to perhaps go to the West instead, more relatively speaking.
Yeah. And guys, we are going to do just 2 minutes with Two Crooks on the Orientals because I didn't do a whole study on them. And it would be appropriate to give a couple minutes just so we understand what's happening. This is just about the United States. So, if you want to mention one or two things about Canada, you can, but primarily about the US. But yeah, I do want to definitely bring that up. I've noticed that there's been an influx of recent Coptic immigrants. So I've noticed some growing Coptic communities in Canada and Indiana, and maybe some in Chicago as well. So they seem to be growing. And that's what Pew Research said, that the OOs went up by like 70%, but a lot of that was from immigration. But as you can see, you have a lot of those LA Armenians. So definitely there's Eastern Christianity as a whole is prominent in America. Pretty much you can find a church in every state, and multiple churches if you're near a city. It just depends on where you are.
Right. The Assyrians, I also should point out, might be counted as part of the greater Iraqi and Syrian populations in the United States. But at that point, I think you would need to distinguish, between them and, say, the EO Arab Christians. It doesn't help that many EO and O Arab Christians and Assyrian Christians will probably pray in the same church, largely because they hear the word Orthodox and think that's that.
Yeah, that's true. That is kind of interesting. I know that again, just like with the Greeks, Chicago has the largest Assyrian community outside of Iraq and Europe. So if you want to come to the Western Hemisphere, you want to see Nestorian Christians, you would come to Chicago. There are also some Protestant slash evangelical Assyrians, believe it or not, out here. But the headquarters of the Assyrian Church of the East was formerly here in Chicago, Illinois. So Chicago is really interesting if you want to meet these obscure Eastern churches. Like you have the Assyrians. There's also a Tigrayan Tewahedo church here. A lot of Syrian Malankara churches from India, and then yeah. So
Right.
we have an interesting background here in Chicago.
Yeah, Ethiopians in particular would also be where you would see, their particular branch of Oriental Orthodoxy. Again, because I believe the Ethiopian diaspora in the United States might be more likely to be Christian than their Muslim counterparts. It also is a bit of a funny point, however, because Ethiopian Christianity and the fact that many Ethiopians are proud that they have their own ancient branch of Christianity, that somehow did not stop the Rastafari movement from emerging and worshiping a guy who was, very much an OO, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's kind of I don't know what we'll have to do Caribbean stuff another time. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is pretty interesting. I do want to also
Yes.
mention that. Oh, now I forgot what I was gonna say. But you guys stay in. I gotta let in the next person, Chup, and then Zach will come after. Chup, how's it going?
Hello? Can you
Yeah,
guys hear me?
I can. What would you like
Gosh,
to talk about?
I'm so nervous. My first time on stream. Well, I just want to say a couple of words about Orthodox Christianity in Colorado.
Okay.
There's not a lot of churches out there, but there is a really big concentration of them in northern Colorado. There's like a 50 to 75 mile sort of radius, so there's a lot of diversity and archdiocese and even rites. There's three Western Rite parishes and a Benedictine Orthodox monastery
Okay.
south that is in the Antiochian Archdiocese. So a bit of a context of what it's kind of like to be an Eastern Orthodox convert in Colorado is that I was baptized in the Goark. I have a spiritual father who is Western Rite. He's a eccentric British man. My
Yeah.
patron saint that I chose is Russian, and all of my friends are Antioch. So Colorado is a really strange place for Orthodoxy, and it's a lot of it really is on the parish level. Um, People are very used to driving for a long period of time, so a lot of people know each other from different dioceses because they don't really see it too much as a diocese thing.
Yeah.
But it is very deeply on the parish level, so it's very personal.
That's good. I mean, I feel like there's already Orthodox subcultures in America, which is a sign that it's widespread enough that not everybody's the exact same. That's a good thing too. So I feel it is quite widespread. It's got a lot more work to go, but any state you're in, you're going to be able to find something, and it might be a lot different to another state. I was in Colorado. The last time I went was probably like 12 years ago. I did not go to any Orthodox churches, but it was a
Yeah,
decent trip.
yeah. No, most of them. The main highway in Colorado is called I-25, and it's often referred to. I think the I-25 highway is the one that goes up and north and south, and most churches are concentrated there. But yeah, it's kind of a trip being here because another thing is a lot of people don't have spiritual fathers in
Right.
America in particular. A lot of people don't, or at least in Colorado. So people pick up a lot of strange things, without like I know a couple of people who were really big on old believer stuff. And I guess me with because I serve I help serve Western Rite masses on Saturdays. Well, it's like nothing crazy. There's not like 1,000 originists running around going nuts.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, there's not. Just like people like to pick up on interesting things out
Well,
here.
the thing is, I mentioned already, but the Originism stuff seems, I just posted it on the screen share, seems to just be a few high level like intellectuals. It's not the people on the ground. So it's
Yeah,
not
no,
really like people are mass converting to Originism. That's not happening.
for sure, for sure. And it is pretty interesting how well read a lot of people out here are when it comes down to converting to Orthodoxy, especially young guys.
Yeah. And I would say maybe a word of caution to that is just it's good to be well read if it stays like in book form and it's like helping your spiritual life, but not if it's just going to be a source of constant arguing and debating and stuff. And I know that most people don't, but there
Yeah.
are some people on the internet who do that. But yeah, it does look promising, and I would contend that people should not overreact to the origin stuff. I'm just posting it here because yeah, it is true. We need to know what's going on. But I don't. If I walk into the OCA one, which is less than a mile from me, I could walk to it during the stream even, and I confront people, say, "Hey, Buster, you believe in origin?" Be like, he was a theologian, but I don't particularly follow his school. I don't think most people would think too much of that, but maybe the types who get really intellectual about it may have to need some correction. Otherwise, I don't think it's like an enormous problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like the average Greek person in America, if they know who Origenist is, who Origin is, they're not an Originist.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I'm gonna say what. Here's nobody. So nobody. Little Odysseus pun there. Nobody says. Do you think Bishop Alexander is just eating the fruit, spitting out the seeds when it comes to origin? He'd be my bishop if I joined OCA. Maybe like if he's just highlighting the good stuff about origin. Uh, I guess so, but he shouldn't have said the word saint because he's not a canonized saint. Did he have some great writings? Yes. Did he have some bad writings that are wrong? Yes, that's also true. That's why he and his twin Tertullian are not actually saints, but they're still part of the genre of church father. So like you're on the council, but you're not a Jedi master. That's what they are basically. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna see Zach. I'm letting him in. You guys are free to stay in the chat. Zach, how's it going?
How's it going there? Yeah, I'm from Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah, I really, yeah, I think a lot of what the other guy said about Colorado, I think that kind of resonates with me and the experience here. There's about 13 churches and missions in total, I think, in the state of Kentucky among Rocor, Antioch, the Greeks, and OCA. I'm in the OCA myself, and it's quite a convert-heavy place. I don't think we have too much of a problem with Originism. I've met like maybe one or two people, or be like, I don't know, but it's not too big of a problem. I am under Bishop Alexander. That is my bishop. He's actually going to be at our parish next week. But I mean, outside of the comments I've seen in that clip, I haven't really seen anything that bad out of him.
I agree.
But I agree. It is, it's not exactly great, but other than that, yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of converts. I mean, it's been a lot of growth, especially in our local areas. I've spoken to a lot of other college students because I'm a college student myself. I've been to a lot of the OCF retreats, and the Orthodox Christian Fellowship and the college stuff, and
How have
there is
those been? How have those
those
been?
have been pretty good. I know like you said, there are a lot of subcultures that have formed, and like we do our OCF retreat down in South Carolina, and it is very, I don't know, it's very interesting experience. That's the only way I can describe it. But like, a lot of these young men mostly young men. They're very sometimes a bit too overzealous, and that can lead to some bad things if they're a little unchecked. But overall, I think it's a good group of people.
What do you think of? I know there's a YouTube channel associated with them too. What do you think of this Orthodox Appalachia thing?
Oh yeah, well actually,
Movement?
it is. I mean, I've been to Holy Cross a few times now, and it is a interesting group. I really think that a lot of the converts have been kind of from that area, and it really is kind of ingrained itself in some very interesting ways in the area. I think mostly a really positive way. And like, yeah, I mean, we do those kind of Appalachian style chants actually in our Paschal liturgy here. And, and I'm from very rural Kentucky, and our church is pretty rural. It's a very small town, and most of the families have lived in those areas for hundreds and hundreds of years now. My family's been here for hundreds of years, and it has ingrained itself in a very good way, I think, especially in that area. And Holy Cross Monastery is great. They're great people over there. But yeah, I mean, I think overall it's been pretty good. There are a lot of like little quirks, like, there's always like, you'd be surprised about how many Georgians, Ukrainians, there are in the state. And, you just get it. Like I'm in the middle of Kentucky, but I have a Georgian priest, like he moved to America about 8 or 9 years ago, and became a priest here. So that's interesting, but we get a lot of interesting things like that.
Yeah, there's I think it's, like I said, a healthy mix of interesting, like local subcultures popping up, as well as obviously a lot of immigrant communities too. Well, guys, let me see if we have anyone else on the call. I don't think so. I think we've pretty much done a good job here. I'm gonna have to get going in a minute, so I'll be closing out. But thank you to Zach, Chup, and Michalis, and Two Crooks for calling in. And we will in the future be doing. I'll be doing some streams on let's see. We may not need a whole one on Canada, but we could definitely mention them in passing. Two Crook, you could come in for another back and forth, and then I'd do Central America, South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and then different parts of Asia. So there's still quite a bit to like get into, and maybe the Balkans as well. So still quite a bit to get into in this, like, where I'm doing this State of Orthodoxy in the World playlist. But if you guys have any other suggestions, leave comments or whatever. And yeah, I'm going to close out. So, guys, kicking you off for now, but thanks for calling in.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Gene. Bye. Bye, Gene. Bye.
All right. See you guys. Okay, so we're going to end it on the Athena restaurant because now I want my hero. Anyway, yeah, Orthodox Adamite, Orthodox Israelite. It says great stream. So, yeah, guys, thank you very much for the call-ins. Thank you for talking in the live chat. Today, if you are just tuning in, it's over, you're too late. However, the stream was about different states in America. What are the top 10 states in America with the highest Orthodox population? We did cover Alaska, which surprisingly is not as Orthodox today as you would think, but it historically was. Definitely covered, Chicago in depth, Massachusetts in depth, a little bit of Florida, mentioned Texas, California, et cetera, and Colorado. So rewind and check those out, and then I'm going to do future streams on the State of Orthodoxy in different parts of LATAM, the Balkans, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. So remember to, and of course, epics, great. Can't believe I didn't mention that. What about Western Europe? Yeah, a lot of immigrant communities, but also a large amount of converts in the west of Europe. So West, I'm also going to include Central Europe in that. So everything from Portugal to the Czech Republic and up to the North Sea Germans, we got to cover all of that as well. We will definitely be looking at the UK. The UK may be its own video, all right? So thank you for all the call-ins. Remember, please, if you haven't, like this video, okay? It's unacceptable that we have an average of 85 to 90 viewers for this whole stream and then like 2 likes. Share it if you are prominent. If you're not prominent, don't bother. And then leave a comment once it's done. Helps with the algo. All right, guys. See y'all later.
Freaking is about the blind. Original Barman along with the 2 pan wicked youths of rock.